Hi everybody, it's Amy. I know it's been a while, but I am back to talk about books with you, and I am really excited today because I've got quite a bit of books to talk about, including some really popular books that are on the internet right now and my opinions of them, including A Darker Shade of Magic and A Court of Thorns and Roses, and tons more. So if you're ready for a fantasy book ride, let's go. So I had a bit of an interesting reading journey over the last few months, and I've got quite a list of books, and they're pretty much all fantasy, which I know we love. So I'm going to get into it first, starting with The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. And I have talked about Adrienne Young's books before. I really enjoyed her YA series, Fable. And I also read her Spells for Forgetting, an adult sort of fiction fantasy. And this book is also an adult fiction with fantasy, some magic, realism. And this is definitely an adult book. It has some intense stuff in it, but you're following the main character who has a really complex family situation, and there's like a curse on her family and how she's having to deal with it. There's a bit of time travel in this book, and there's a bit of romance in this book and some mystery. I really enjoyed the mystery aspect of it and just seeing how everything kind of unfolded through time, and you're trying to like piece things together with her. But I also really enjoyed the magic of this book. It was very interesting. Just to be aware, it is an adult book. There are adult themes in it, so I wouldn't recommend it for every age, but I definitely would recommend it. It was a very interesting read. And yeah, next up is Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. And this was my first T. Kingfisher novel. It was a really short read, sort of a novella. And I felt like it gave me a taste of her writing. This was sort of a darker Grimm's fairy tale kind of retelling of Sleeping Beauty. It was really interesting. There was very interesting magic. And like I said, it was a little bit of a darker take on it. It has some intense moments, but I would consider this like a YA kind of read. But there is some violence in it, so just to be aware of that. But it's very short, and it was just very like quirky and a little chaotic. But it was really interesting kind of seeing a switch up of the roles as far as the characters in the Sleeping Beauty story. So I think I gave this 3 stars. It wasn't like my favorite book, but I definitely found it interesting and I enjoyed reading it. Next, we have Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And oh my gosh, I loved this book. It was so whimsical and just kind of wild. There were so many interesting characters, but I just really enjoyed the experience, especially of listening to the audiobook. The voice acting and narration was just done really, really well. And I definitely gave this 5 stars. You're sort of following the story of 2 characters who are competing in this magical circus. They both have magical powers, and it's definitely not super plot heavy. It's definitely more of an atmospheric sort of book. So if you're not into just kind of like having more vibes than plot, there definitely is a plot. It's going somewhere, but it's definitely about the atmosphere, vibes of the circus and just the world that they are navigating and the characters' relationships. So if that's not really your thing, I probably wouldn't recommend it. But it is a YA book, but there was a little bit of spice in there that I felt was a little bit much for a YA book. I won't go into too much detail about it, but just something to be aware of. I think that was really my only drawback of the book, but it was still a 5-star read for me. I absolutely loved the magic and the characters and how all their relationships intertwined. It definitely has a darker kind of tone to it, and it definitely just like, it keeps surprising you as you keep going. But the world that Erin Morgenstern painted was just so otherworldly and whimsical, and the circus is just this wild and dark and magical place, and I just didn't want it to end. It was that good. So I definitely gave this 5 stars. Next up, we have Brissinger, which is the 3rd book of the Inheritance Cycle, or the Aragon series by Christopher Paolini. And Zach, my husband, and I have been reading this book aloud. I tend to read out loud, and he listens. I listen to audiobooks, but he's more of an audiobook person than I am. But we've just really enjoyed reading this series together. He's read it first. He's read it a few times. This was my first time going through it, and I've really enjoyed it. But this 3rd book was definitely like a building block to the finale conclusion of the series that's coming in the 4th book. It had some interesting moments and politics and everything, but it wasn't the strongest book of the series, in my opinion. But I still really enjoyed it. I loved just getting to be with all the characters again and being in that world with Aragon and Saphira. There's definitely like battles going on, and just getting further into the intense part of the story as far as the war that's going on within the story. And I think I gave this 4 stars, I believe, on my Goodreads. If you don't follow me on Goodreads, you can go and look me up. I'll try to have a link for that in the description. I just have really enjoyed reading through this series, and now that we've finished it, we have actually started Murtagh, which, if you don't know, is the new sort of continuation in this world that Christopher Paolini put out. It was November 7th, I believe. And we just started reading it. We're a little over 100 pages in, and we're really enjoying it. So if you enjoyed the Aragon series, be sure to check out Murtagh. It is on Libby through your library. I put a hold on it, but we just went ahead and bought the book. So you can get it through Libby if you don't have the money right now. I know with the holidays coming up, trying to save money for gifts and things like that. So you can still check it out on Libby through your library. But yeah, that's Brissinger. Next, we have a middle grade fantasy book, The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. And I, again, listened to the audio for this book, and it was a phenomenal book. I believe it won the Newbery Award. I'm not sure what year, but yes, I believe it won the Newbery Award. And there is many, many reasons why. It was such a beautifully written book. There is found family and magic and sweet characters. There is a bit of a dark element to it. I feel like that was kind of a theme for the books that I read through September, October, into November. I was just trying to get kind of like October spooky vibes, I guess, maybe. But this I was seeing recommended as sort of not completely cozy fantasy, but a whimsical sort of fantasy. The characters in it are just wonderful, and the voice acting for the audiobook was absolutely phenomenal. It just brought the story to life. So I highly, highly recommend listening to the audiobook if you're going to read this book. But you're following the story of a young girl who has magic that is dangerous, and her found family is sort of trying to help protect her from it. And you're also dealing with politics of this sort of township, an area that she lives in. And it is really interesting and complex for a middle grade story. So I really feel like a wide range of ages would enjoy this book. I'm 32 and I thoroughly enjoyed the book. It's just, again, the magic is just whimsical and interesting, and there's definitely like topics of like grief and abandonment and things like that addressed. But it's done in a really meaningful and beautiful way. And I would recommend this book. It was definitely a 5-star read for me. Now I can get to the final conclusion of the Inheritance series, or the Aragon series. The 4th book, called Inheritance by Christopher Paolini. Reading this final book of the Inheritance series, it wrapped everything up so well. Almost too well, in that I felt like there were some details that were covered that was just kind of unnecessary, but I realized that Paolini was trying to touch on everything and wrap everything up and give you that sort of completion to the series. But I really enjoyed the 4th book of this series. It had all the politics and war and magic and dragons, complex relationships, just all the things that you want out of your fantasy book. And this is a YA series. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but it does have some intense and violent moments, which I feel like when you're reading fantasy, especially higher kind of fantasy books, that's just to be expected. But it's just done so well. And I do have a bit of a challenge reading Paolini's writing, just his writing style and editing style. He's definitely into like run-on sentences and things like that, which like can irk me sometimes because I'm reading it aloud with my husband Zach, and it can be a little bit much sometimes, and he loves his vocabulary and everything, but it's good to read that kind of writing. It challenges you, even for a YA book. But especially when you're in a world of made-up things, you're trying to pronounce things and get through all of that kind of language. But I loved this series. I loved it so much. And the 4th book definitely was a 5-star read to wrap up this series. Now I'm getting into some of the books that I've read more recently in the month of November. I'm kind of spanning, like I said, September, October, and now into November. We started a new series waiting for Murtag to come out, Zach and I, A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. And everyone talks about this book, this series on TikTok, and there's a reason. It is so good. It is so good. It is a short read. It is an adult fantasy. There's a bit of violence and references to some abuse and things like that. So just be aware of those kind of triggering topics. It's a phenomenal book. It's really action-packed, it's fast-paced, and I felt like we just kind of breezed through it. It's easy to read, it flows really well, and I just really enjoyed the book. The characters are so interesting. You're following 2 kind of main characters, Kel and Lila, and I really enjoyed how different they were and the aspects of their personality. I'm a sucker for like pirate books and pirate characters, and Lila definitely has like kind of a chaotic pirate thief energy to her. And she's been through a lot, and you're definitely going through an emotional journey with her and with Kel as well. And I love Kel. He really loves people and cares about people, wants to do the right thing, but he is complicated as well. And the world itself is complicated. The magic in this book is so interesting. It's so unique and complicated. It's not difficult to understand, even though it is complicated. It's just unique. I hadn't really heard of anything like it before. You're traveling through to different versions of London. It's just so interesting how different they are and how she builds these unique worlds that you're jumping back and forth through. And just the journey and adventure that they go on. It's just such an enjoyable book. Definitely a 5-star read for me. I would highly recommend it. The next book that I have read during the month of November is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. And this is a YA fantasy, but I really thought that this was a bit more adult of a fantasy. There's sort of a new category coming about called new adult. That's kind of an in-between of young adult and full-on adult fantasy. I definitely would think this is more of a new adult book, but I know that's kind of a newer category. I have some complex feelings about this book because of the content in it. I enjoyed the book. It took me a while to kind of get through it because of the sort of triggers that are in the book. And there is a warning at the beginning of the book from the author, but it's not really specific about what is in the book. It definitely covers the topics of emotional, physical abuse, and SA. So definitely something to be aware of. But by the end of the book, I was like, I get it. I get the message that you're trying to put across. And I felt like even though you kind of had to go on a journey to get that understanding, you were going on that journey with the main character. And I thought it was actually well done. This book is not for everybody. I definitely want to make that clear. Because it does have some intense topics. And as I was reading it, there's like some innuendo kind of jokes that I was like, this is weird. And it kind of almost dumbed down the writing for me. But once I got to the end, I kind of understood that maybe this is kind of how the main character is like dealing with difficult trauma in her life. Like I said, I have complex feelings about it. You know, by the end, I was like, I get this, and I enjoyed the journey that you went on. I really enjoyed the magic that was in this book. I enjoyed the complex relationships and the politics in this book. I really enjoyed the culture that was sort of the influence for this book. It was definitely like Eastern European, Germanic sort of influences. And she even has a glossary in the back of the book that for all the different terms that she uses and everything. But it's definitely got like a lot of folklore influences and really interesting magic with that. So I really enjoyed those aspects of the book. And there's definitely like a mystery element to it as well that you're kind of trying to figure out with the main character and the sort of detective character in this book. I don't know if I mentioned that I enjoyed the romance in this book as well. There's a lot of elements that I liked about the book, but because of the heavy topics and themes in this book, I definitely wouldn't recommend it for everybody. Like I said, you definitely have to go on a journey with the book and kind of, it does grab you at the beginning. It kind of ebbs and flows, but once you get to the end, I really feel like it's worth it. It's 4 stars for me, but it might not be for everybody. I also read The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton, and I really enjoyed this book. It is an adult fiction with some magic thrown in there, but I definitely would consider it more of a romance sort of book. But it's got a lot of adventure, it's got a lot of humor, quirky characters, and you're just going on an adventure with them, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely like pirate vibes. I love pirate books. Zach makes fun of me for it because I read so many pirate books this summer, and it seems to be when I pick books, like there can be different characters that have sort of a pirate vibe to them. And this was definitely like full on pirates. Instead of ships, there were flying houses, and everybody's at each other's throats, but it is hilarious. It is endearing. I enjoyed the romance of this book. There is spice in this book. I skip over that kind of stuff. But just be aware that there is those sort of things in there, and there are some adult innuendo kind of jokes in there. But it was just a really fun read. It is a series. I don't think they're like connected, but they are like in the same world, I believe. But I just really enjoyed this read. It was a lot of fun, and I am pretty sure I gave it 4 or 5 stars. I think I gave it 4 stars. It was a lot of fun and just really whimsical and quirky. I found myself laughing all the time when I was reading this book. So I would definitely recommend it, but just be aware of the kind of content that's in it. I know there's an outfit change, but I wanted to finish off the books that I have read in the month of November. And one of the books that I finished is a very popular book on TikTok, and it is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And it is a really popular series. It is definitely a romantasy, as they're calling it, romance-heavy book with fantasy elements. And I wanted to see what all the hype was about, and I honestly just didn't really care for it that much. I think I gave it 2 stars on my Goodreads, and I understand the reasons for why it's popular. There is the romance, there are some high stakes, and I understand the spice and those sort of elements make it pretty popular, but I honestly just didn't find the characters and their motivations that compelling. There were some really great elements to it. The fae magic and the villain and the trials that happen in the book were very convincing. It definitely has some like violence to it. It is an adult fantasy for sure. There's language and some spice and some violence. But overall, it was not compelling me to want to continue to read the series. A lot of people have said that the second book is even better, but if the first book doesn't really grab me in a way that makes me want to continue the series, I'm just gonna put it down and be like, I gave it a try and it's just not for me. So that is my thoughts on A Court of Thorns and Roses. Next, I started getting into some winter and holiday books, and I'm going to continue doing that in the month of December. But to finish out November, I started the book called One Day in December by Josie Silver, and this is an adult romance book. It takes place over a span of several years, but it's focused on a complicated relationship that starts one day in December, and it sort of tracks back to the holidays and Christmas and New Year's every year, and starting afresh and trying to make changes in their lives. But it's about 2 characters who their eyes meet at a bus stop, and they end up going separate ways, and a year later run into each other when one is dating the best friend of the other. So you can imagine the chaos that ensues. And it's about their friendship and relationship that develops over several years and just the different life situations that happen. By the end, I just did not like the overall story. In the beginning, I was really hooked. I was like, where is this going to go? This sounds really interesting. And the further we kept going, I felt conflicted about it. I don't want to give any spoilers away if you don't want to know about some possible... I would think that they're kind of a trigger, but if you don't want any spoilers about the book, then just be aware of what I'm about to say. They're calling it even a trope now, the cheating trope. And I understand that there can be different feelings about it, but it personally just kind of turned me off. And I wasn't really rooting for the characters after that anymore. So, I don't think I'm hoping not too much of a spoiler, but just by the end, I wasn't really rooting for them to get together because I just didn't feel, I was like, I don't love these characters as much anymore. So it definitely has like some Love Actually kind of vibes to it. It takes place in the UK, the British characters. And it definitely has that kind of Love Actually sort of holiday movie vibe, if you're into that. But I personally just didn't love it, but I'm glad that I gave it a try. It was part of Reese Witherspoon's book club choices. And the audiobook was actually pretty good. The narration was really good. It had a female and male perspective. So there was that, but overall, I just didn't really care for the book. Next, I have another holiday Christmas book, and I wanted to get into some cozy mystery books. So I read Christmas Caramel Murder by JoAnne Fluke. And JoAnne Fluke has many, many cozy mystery books, and I just wanted to pick one that was holiday Christmas themed. It is a very short read. I listened to the audiobook and I think it was about 4 hours. And that even has like recipes at the end of every chapter. So you could even skip through those and it's even shorter than that. But it was a cute little story. I felt like it was a little bit dated at times, even though it was modern enough where it was like people are texting on their phones, sending pictures on their phones and that sort of thing. But it definitely has like a little bit of a dated sort of feel to it, but it also kind of makes it cozy at the same time. So it's really just about your taste, I think. But it is a murder mystery book, and it centers around a character who owns a bakery, and she is trying to solve a mystery that involves her friends and a few people in the town that she lives in. It's a small town, and everybody is kind of in everybody's business, it feels like. And someone mysteriously is murdered, and she is trying to answer the questions, tie up the loose ends, and figure out what's going on in order to help her friend that is possibly implicated in this sticky situation. I enjoyed the book overall. It wasn't like a favorite book of mine, but I enjoyed the experience, and it definitely had an interesting ending. So if you're into cozy mysteries, I would definitely recommend this one. Last but not least, for the month of November, I read Tessa and Weston, The Best Christmas Ever by Abbie Emmons. And Abbie Emmons is an indie author who has a YouTube channel where she is helping you write your own books and stories. And I have watched her videos myself, and she does a fantastic job. And I've been wanting to read her books for a while. She has another Tess and Weston book, and then another, I believe, fantasy book that just came out this year. But I wanted to read this one because it was Christmas themed, and it is a really cute YA romance book. And I think if you read the first Tessa and Weston book, that you would maybe get a little bit more information about their relationship, because it does play off a little bit of that, but I feel like you can listen to it without having, or I listened to it, the audiobook, but I feel like you could read it, experience it, potentially without having read the first book. But it was just a really cute, very wholesome YA romance book. If you're not into like the really like cutesy, swooning, sort of drama kind of romance books, or just YA romance, you may not like this book. But if you're into all of that, then you will definitely like this book. It definitely has like teenage angst and romance, but it's nothing too heavy or over the top. And I like it because it had just some really sweet moments in it, and it definitely had some real life situations dealing with family, estranged family, and even dealing with disabilities, because Weston is an amputee. And I just really enjoyed adding those complexities to the story. But it's a really cute, Christmassy sort of book, and it just has all the warm and fuzzy vibes, very wholesome sort of YA romance. There was lots of kissing. If that bothers you, then then maybe this isn't the book for you. But it was just a really cute audiobook, and I definitely would recommend it. So I hope that you have enjoyed this journey of reading with me. If you've read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and let me know what you have been reading lately and what you have really enjoyed. I know as we're coming to the close of this year, we're getting into the holidays, and you probably have some books on your want to read list, your TBR list. Let me know what those are too. And I am hoping to have a book haul for you for some holiday book recommendations. So that will be coming soon, hopefully. And I hope that you're doing well. Let me know how you are in the comments, and I will see you guys later. Bye.